I learned that if you have all your eggs in the government's basket, that basket can get flipped upside down pretty quick, so you probably shouldn't do that. Because someone says you can do something in 5 hours a week, you also have to use a little bit of common sense to understand that A, do you have 5 hours a week to give? And B, is it really 5 hours or is it 15 or is it 20? And if it is, do you have that and do you really want to use your time that you could be spending with your family to do that? There's three things that you need to buy properties, right? You need time, you need knowledge, and you need money. You don't need to have all three of those, but you do need to have two of them.
If you're buying something and just hope that the market carries it, then you could be sorely disappointed. If you find something that you can breathe life into and fix and change it and make it better, then you actually force and create your own value. And those opportunities are everywhere. And I'm telling you, there's so much knowledge. So go out and find and start looking at deals, start underwriting deals, start getting in some of these masterminds and some of these groups, and do that first and see if you even like it.
Hi, excited to be here with you for episode 6 of Hacking Real Estate. Well, we're past the halfway mark and we're gaining more and more momentum and you're learning more and more along the way. So thanks for being here. We do appreciate your time and respect it and want to continue to deliver value for you. In the meantime, I want you to know that you can own this entire series as well as some great bonuses. And when you do it during the free viewing period, which we're in right now during our 9-part series, you can get it at a steep discount. So several packages there. And by the way, if you're someone who's already done that, many of you have already, who've already decided to make the investment in this series, I want you to know that you have our sincere gratitude. Nothing is more fulfilling than to know that you value this enough to want to own it and revisit it over and over again. So thank you for that. And if you haven't done that yet, now's a good time to check it out. We're still in the free viewing period. In the meantime, we have a big episode coming up for you called Episode 6. Let's dive right into it. James, in your next interview, you sat with someone who I have known for some years, and I really love Ron Phillips. He's a great guy, has amazing experience and knowledge. And whenever I've called him here and there to ask him for some help or some insight, he always gives it to me, and it's always strong advice. What was your experience?
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I didn't know you knew him.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. He is a wealth of information. And again, another guy who is all about mentoring, makes it all really easy to digest. So much information on all the aspects of real estate, on the brokerage side, money side, how to find a property, how to finance the property, what to do with it. He's a wealth of information and a solid teacher.
Yeah, and that's the thing I really like about him is that when I ask him, he gives me a response that I can understand, which is really good.
Yeah.
So with that, enjoy this interview with Ron Phillips. We learned a lot from him, and now it's time for you to do the same.
Ron, thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you because we've talked to a lot of real estate experts. And it's the interesting thing about real estate to me is there's so many spokes on that wheel, right? So many ways to get into it. You're kind of in all of them.
Definitely not all of them, but a lot of them. Yeah. And you're right. Real estate is multifaceted, and I think some people say that it's a one-size-fits-all thing because that's what they're doing, and it's just not. I mean, real estate is it's really neat. You can do so many different things. As a matter of fact, you can buy in so many different ways. You can sell in so many different ways. There's so many different types of real estate that you can do each one of those things. It's really a cool thing.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I got started because I went to a seminar way back, like 99 or something like that, and I thought I was answering a job ad for an assistant to a real estate person, which I thought would be cool to learn about real estate, and turns out it was a seminar. So So I bought the seminar, went to the seminar, left, and did exactly what the guy told me to do. Found a deal my first week out. And his program was that you go find the deal and you do all the work. He'll fund the deal and split it 50-50. I thought that sounded like a great deal. So I submitted it, and they promptly denied it. And then I called back, and I'm like, well, tell me what I need to fix so that I can fix it, get the right one next time. And well, it turns out that there really wasn't anything to fix. They just weren't going to do my deal. And so after a day of, trying to figure out what the heck now, I remembered that he taught us how to do creative deals. So I just went and did the creative piece that he said, and I actually never really bought that property, but I controlled it and sold it within 30 days. I made just under $20,000 on my first deal, and I was hooked. So that's how I got started in real estate, was rehabbing and flipping houses. I did that for 3, 4, 5 years, and then I got into rental property after that.
Do you remember what you did creative? So I'm assuming that's the finance you had to get creative with.
No, it was actually, this house had a problem. And the problem was that when you walked into the house and you looked up, the ceiling there was a stain on the ceiling. And there's nobody who's going to buy the property retail with a stain on the ceiling. And there was only enough room in there, to be able to, I needed to help her get some money to move out of the house. And then I needed to make some profit on the deal. So I went in and I just put an option on the property for the price that she needed on it. And I told her that for my option consideration, because in order to make an option work, there has to be consideration of some sort. So usually that's money. But in my case, I didn't even use money. I just said, hey, I'll fix your ceiling for you. And worst case scenario, if I don't close, your ceiling's fixed, right? But I didn't know how to fix the ceiling either. So I went to my brother and I said, hey, man, come help me fix this ceiling and I'll split the profit with you. And so we went in and fixed her ceiling. And the first person that walked through that house after we fixed the ceiling bought it for our contract price. And we got the money in the middle. So we helped this lady out of her house before she got foreclosed on. She had plenty of money to move on and, get another house or whatever she was going to do. And then we made some profit for what we did. And so it was a creative deal. It helped the person who needed help selling the property so she didn't get foreclosed on. It helped the end buyer, and it helped us. It's a win-win-win. It was awesome.
Do you remember how you found that property?
I actually don't. I think I think it was actually word of mouth. I think I got out and I told everybody what I was doing, that I'd just been to the seminar. And I think somebody mentioned, hey, I know this lady, and she needs help. She's going to get foreclosed on. Sounds like exactly what you do. And I'm like, yeah, let me go talk to her. So, because we didn't really do any advertising or anything like that either for that first one. So,
nice.
Yeah.
So you had a nice home run right out of the gate.
Yeah, that doesn't happen for most people, but it did for me, and it hooked me. And then I convinced my brother to go into business, and we went and rehabbed houses for several years in Kansas City, and it was a lot of fun.
Were you living in Kansas City?
Just outside of Kansas City, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got into flips.
Yeah, actually full rehabs. So we would buy these houses that were really, really junked out, and then we would completely renovate them, and then we would sell them on the retail market to end buyers.
So is your brother on the contract side, or did you have to hire crews? How'd you make this work?
We hired crews, and he managed the crews. That was the part of business I really didn't like. So I handled the marketing of both ends, finding the properties and then finding the buyers, and he handled the contractor piece. So at one time we had 3 crews rolling, and we had between 5 and 10 houses going, and it was fun. We had a great time.
And this from one seminar.
Yeah, and of course we went to other ones because you got to continually learn what you're doing. But yeah, all that from one seminar.
Mm-hmm. Did you get your real estate license as you went?
Not for years after
Really?
that. You don't need a real estate license to buy and sell real estate. You need a license to sell other people's real estate, but not your own real estate.
Mm-hmm. So what'd you learn in that period?
Oh my gosh, so much.
Yeah.
managing contractors is a real full-time job. Those guys, I don't know what it is about the contract world, but they are notoriously late, over budget, you name it, anything that can go wrong. So you really have to have systems dialed in to be able to do that business. I learned that if you have all your eggs in the government's basket, that basket can get flipped upside down pretty quick. So you probably shouldn't do that. And also, we learned that, market rent is really, that's the key to everything. If the market rent is, the numbers work with market rent, and you can get a little bit more with Section 8, great. But you should never plan on, something that the government controls. It's just not a good idea.
So you had this portfolio of houses, homes that were renting, and then the government changed the rules. How'd you survive that?
Well, by that time we almost had a year, and then we just sold them retail, because we had a year on title, so we could then sell them through HUD. And by that time I completely changed my business model, and we were buying and selling newer homes to out-of-state investors who were busy professionals and couldn't get out and buy real estate on their own. They needed somebody to go do it for them. And since we had all of the infrastructure to be able to do that, then we just kind of plugged them into our system, and it worked really, really well. So we started making money by both brokering, that's when I got my real estate license, by both brokering and also buying and selling properties ourselves to people who are out of state, connecting them with property management companies, connecting them with financing and all the things that they need to make this business work remotely. And that was in 2005, and I've been doing the same thing basically ever since. I still do that to this day.
I was going to say that model still works for you, and you still do that.
Yeah.
And this is really intriguing to me, because I think for a lot of us that want to get into real estate but are not sure how to do it or a little bit afraid, finding the experts who are finding the homes and all the expertise is needed. And like I'm in Utah, or for those of us out west, property values are going way up.
Right.
Rents aren't really keeping up. So out of state, there's a lot of areas out of state I'm intrigued with.
Yeah, because that was the thing that we found really quickly was that people out west and even up in the Northeast, where house prices are out of control, but rents are still pretty modest. Those people didn't even realize you could buy a property and cash flow it. There were so many people who bought properties that are barely breaking even or maybe even negative cash flow just for appreciation. They had no concept that you could actually buy a property and cash flow it. And one of the main questions we would get from out-of-state folks is, why are people paying so much rent in the Midwest when the house prices are so low? And I just tell those people, there's jobs in the Midwest. People actually live in the Midwest. Just the fact that there's a lot of land means that the house prices don't go up crazy. Like here in Utah, the Salt Lake Valley is landlocked. There's no more land than is available inside that mountain range, and it goes all the way around, right? So that property is necessarily going to increase in value because there's just only so much of it. Well, Kansas City, for instance, we need more land. We just kick some cows out and keep moving. There's tons of land there. We're not landlocked by anything. And so it's just a completely different market. And there are a lot of markets like that where, rent prices versus house prices is really, really attractive for a person who wants to go in and buy a property and cash flow it. Probably don't see the crazy swings in prices, but if you're buying for income, those are great places to go buy properties. And so once people learn that from out of state and that you can manage it remotely, well, that's a pretty good investment, because you get 4 returns on your money from one investment, and they all work kind of all the time.
4 returns?
Right. So we just talked about cash flow, right? So you're getting actual cash on an annual basis, on a monthly basis, but you also have someone in your property who is by default paying your mortgage. So you're getting equity increase by someone decreasing your mortgage, right? And that's a return. It's one that people don't think about, but it's happening all the time. Because you have an amortization schedule that you're paying. Some of that is not interest, some of it's principal, and they're paying down the principal for you, right? In addition to that, the government gives you, right now anyway, the government gives you depreciation. So you can write off your structure over 27 and a half years. So every year you get money back in your pocket from your taxes just by owning that asset. And then finally, you get appreciation. And in the Midwest, typically it's not a crazy amount like you're used to out west. But if you're leveraged into the property, like if you put 20% down, you've put on a $100,000 house, you put $20,000 into the house, but you're getting 3% or 4% appreciation on $100,000, which means you're leveraged and your return is significant. That's a significant number. And all four of those are working all the time. And so when you combine all of those, the return on investment is staggering. It's almost not believable.
So you've got multiple companies now, right?
I do, yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, still real estate. I'm really intrigued with the ability to go to one-stop shopping, right? Where your companies, you're finding the markets, you're finding the homes, rehabbing the homes, and getting renters in them.
Yep.
And then putting them up on the market for your clients.
Yep.
Right? How does someone become one of your clients?
It's easy. So usually we like for people to go through our education. It's super simple, but that way they understand what they're doing. A lot of people we find have already owned rental properties. They just aren't cash flowing very well. And in either case, whether you know what you're doing or whether you don't know what you're doing, we can educate you pretty easily on why this works and how it works. And in either scenario, my office just, I have a bunch of consultants. What we do is we sit down with people, we go over their assets, find out where their assets are located, and which ones aren't working as well as hard as they should be for the client, and then we help them find properties that match what they're trying to accomplish and in the time frame that they're trying to accomplish it. Because again, every area and every type of property has different characteristics that are pros and cons, and each one of those classes of properties fits or doesn't fit a particular buyer. And so we really try hard to match our buyers with the type of property that will work the best for them, right? So if they're a busy professional, maybe an old property that's going to create a lot more calls from the management company is not really in their best interest. Maybe a new construction property that's not going to have very many problems for the first 3 to 5 years is a better for them. Maybe if somebody needs to build equity, they should roll the dice a little bit on something that has a little bit more chance of some decent appreciation, but may have some more phone calls like that from the management company. Maybe it's not single family homes at all. If you're trying to deploy $1 million, that's a lot of single family homes. Maybe you'd be better to buy some fourplexes or buy a small apartment complex or something like that. Because all of those different property types, right? Again, they have their pros and cons, and they have their place. $1 million in $100,000 single family homes leveraged, that's a lot of work when you can just deploy that money into something else that gives you more doors, and maybe 1 or 2 property management companies to deal with instead of 15 or 20 like you might get if you try to diversify into all single family homes. Your company is, are you the property management company as well? Is that one of your, or you find them? No, we go out and we find them, vet them, and then we give them a lot of business. Typically, we're either the largest or one of the largest clients collectively of that management company, and so that gives us a little bit of clout so that we can help our clients if there's ever a problem. Because look, it's real estate and it's property management and there's a bunch of people, right, involved. And when you mix those three things, there's almost always going to be a challenge of some sort. But it's the ability to work through those challenges and still remain profitable that make it work. When you get your clients that have just started, do you see some common mistakes? I think when they work with us, the most common mistake that I see sometimes is they get a little ahead of their skis, so to speak, and lean in a little too fast before they really understand what it means to own 5 to 10 single-family homes and have 4 or 5 management companies that they're dealing with. The management companies do all of the hard work, but you still have to communicate with them. and you still have to, run your books. And when you have that many properties and that much coming in, and you have different LLCs and things like that, that people who haven't been business owners and don't understand what all that entails, that can be overwhelming to people sometimes. And I think that would be the biggest mistake that I see people make, because we try to help people understand their finances up front, where if all you have to your name is $50,000 and the property is going to cost you $35,000 to get into, maybe you can qualify for the loan, but maybe that's not the best thing for you right now, because it's going to take almost all your liquid cash. Because you need liquidity for your life, you need liquidity for each asset you buy, and we try really hard to make sure that we're helping and not hurting. And just because you can sometimes doesn't mean you should. So that doesn't typically happen, because that's why we ask all the questions we ask up front. So I think the biggest, quote, blunder I guess people make is running a little too fast. We try to help people not make that one too, but we can't keep people from buying properties if they want to buy them, because we can sell them 3, they can go buy 8 from someone else, or on their own. But I think that's the largest mistake I see people make.
So when you got into coaching and educating, one of the things I liked is there's so much out there, right? There are books, seminars,
Yep.
blogs, YouTube, but you saw a definite gap between education and doing.
Right.
So how do you blend those?
That's really the whole purpose of our company. It's to bridge that gap between education and implementation, right? Because for whatever reason, all coaching isn't created equal. And I'm a product of coaching, right? So I'm not a hater of coaching, but the seminar world and the coaching world is full of people who promise, overpromise, and then way underdeliver. In addition to that, because someone says you can do something in 5 hours a week, you also have to use a little bit of common sense to understand that, A, do you have 5 hours a week to give? And B, is it really 5 hours, or is it 15, or is it 20? And if it is, do you have that, and do you really want to use your time that you could be spending with your family to do that? Or are you going to do it, is a better question. And so a lot of it falls on both sides, right? You have the education crowd and the seminar coaching world who says, look, I've delivered the goods, you have to go do the work. That is absolutely true, but you did tell them it was going to be 5 hours a week, and it's really 20 or 30. You can't rehab a property in 5 hours a week. It's hard enough to find deals in 5 hours a week, let alone do anything with the deals, right? So I think there's both sides of the coin. And what we've done is we've gone in and said, look, if you want to buy real estate, there's literally nothing stopping you from buying real estate. You can do this from your easy chair at home, or from your desk at work. You can go through the education very quickly, because this is not a complicated concept. And then you can buy properties. And we've actually worked with coaching companies to help their students actually have some success in buying properties where they've failed because they didn't have the time, or they didn't want to give the time, or whatever it takes. Because in order to rehab houses, there's a lot of work involved in that. So a seminar company can tell you it's not really that much work, but it is. Let's just be honest, it's a lot of work. And wholesaling properties is a lot of work too. So what we've done is just gone out there and said, here's the easy button. If you want to own real estate and you want cash flowing real estate, you can just buy it. It's literally already cash flowing. It has a tenant in place. It's professionally managed. Here's the financing. If you need a CPA, here's the CPA. Literally, whatever you need, it's all here for you. It just makes it super easy for people to actually get into the business and start doing it.
I like that, because my wife's brother, his house is in Texas, and the winds blew down the fence just to repair his fence. He had to get permits. He couldn't just go fix his fence.
Right.
It was ludicrous. So I guess, if you're going to rehab a house, how much more is involved?
It's a lot of work. And then it's not one fence contractor. It's all of the contractors that go into actually repairing and remodeling a house. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. And for whatever reason, some people think they can do that from out of state. It's hard enough to do that down the street from your house, let alone out of state. It's almost impossible to not get ripped off.
But I mean, I know there's people out there that want to do that. That's what they want. It's
sure.
not a sideline. That's what they kind of want to do.
For sure.
But I really like the idea of, for me, I'm sitting here going, so you find the experts who found all that.
Yep. And I would tell the people who want to go and rehab properties, there's a lot of money in that. There's a lot of money in wholesaling properties. There's a lot of money in buying subject to. There's a lot of money in all these different things that people sell education on. The most important thing is not the thing, it's who it is that's doing it. Make sure that you really connect with those people and make sure you do your homework on whether or not their students are really successful. And if they are, I'm a huge believer in that you should pay for education, not do it by hard knocks, right? You can save a lot of money by not making the same mistakes somebody else has already made for you. Just choose wisely when you're doing it. Don't spend a small fortune on a program or on a coaching program where you don't even know what the outcome is for the majority of their students. But I mean, by all means, go out and seek out the best, pay them for their experience, and leap ahead 4, 5, 10 years by doing so.
The choosing wisely is the trick, right?
That's the most important piece for sure, because and especially in this particular time in the market, there are so many people doing it because finding deals is harder, right? So if finding deals is harder, there's a lot of people who move to selling education when the deals are harder to come by. Those aren't necessarily the people you want to be buying your education from, right? Because they're opportunists who have shifted in the market because it's harder to make money doing what they were doing. You want to be taught by the people who haven't shifted out of that. They're still doing it. And in spite of it being hard, they're still finding 10 times the deals these other people who have shifted are finding. Those are the people you want to buy your education from because they know what they're doing in the current market.
So you said deals are harder to find. And so I go back to those of us who are just getting into it or on the fence and wanting to get into it. This seems like such a crazy time.
It's absolutely insane.
The government's printing money, there's lockdowns, there's not lockdowns. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And I know there's like big hedge funds buying up property everywhere,
Yep.
right? Bill Gates is buying every ounce of, every acre of farmland.
Yep.
Is it a good time? Is it still a good time to get in?
Well, I'm both a buyer and a seller right now. And I think real estate all the time is good. Can you overpay for a property? Can you not buy on good fundamentals and get yourself in trouble? Well, yeah, you can do that in the current market, and you can do that. I mean, people could do that. It was harder to do it in 2010 and 11 and 12, but you could, for sure. You can make money in any real estate cycle, period. But you have to use the same fundamentals. The fundamentals don't change just because it's harder to get deals. And what I find people making mistakes both in the wholesale, retail, rehab business, cash flow business, you name whatever the business is, what they're doing is they're skinnying down all of their margins to be competitive, and that's when you get yourself into trouble. In every business, really.
Sure. When
your margins start to slim all the way down, you can move your parameters to play in this game right here, or you can get better at finding the deals and negotiating the deals on the front end so that you can keep the spread that you are used to making on the deals. And the pros, that's what they're doing. They're not playing this game of, hey, it's really hard, I'm going to go compete with all these hedge funds. You can't compete with the hedge funds. Right. They have billions and billions of dollars. They're overpaying for properties. We'll see later on down the road if that works out really well for them or not. But for a little guy who doesn't have billions of dollars that's not theirs, probably not a good idea to compete with those guys. You have to get ahead of them. You have to do way better at marketing. You have to do way better at negotiations. You just have to become better. And I think it's like that in every business. So some competition is probably good. It'll hone your skills and make you better. Or it will obviously take anybody in the market who doesn't know what they're doing and it's that old adage that Warren Buffett says, right? You can always tell who's been swimming naked when the tide goes out. It's kind of like that.
Well, and I guess those people will just create opportunity for
Yep.
the people that are paying attention.
Yep.
Big difference between 2008 and now?
Yeah, huge difference. And, my buddies and I have been in the space, have been talking about this and trying to figure the market out for quite a while, because it feels, not data, it feels a lot like 2007. But the data is completely polar opposite of what it was in 2007 and 8. We don't have a mortgage crisis. We really do have a supply-demand problem, because we haven't built enough units for the last decade, for a myriad of reasons, not the least of which is that the government has interfered in the free market. And so the data suggests that the market is going to keep going up. And then, I look at a market like Memphis where, entry-level new construction single-family homes are $300,000 to $350,000, and I think to myself, one tick in the interest rates, and that is no longer an affordable house, right? So I'm not sure which lever gets pulled here, but the market is completely different than it was in 2008, and it feels like it's got legs, and at the same time, something feels off, and I can't put my finger on exactly what it is.
Well, because the world feels off.
Yep. In spite of that, what's happened over the last several years here, or 18 months, properties did fine. Our portfolios did fine. Collections were fine. When the whole world was screaming that nobody's paying their rent, I didn't experience that. Most of the people that I know didn't experience that. And so you kind of have to take what the media says with a little bit of a grain of salt, because they chuck all the markets into one, they shake them all up, and then they report their findings. Well, if you take a city like New York and you compare it to Kansas City or Memphis, or one of these places where the rent's not really that high and everybody didn't leave because the taxes are crazy and they locked everything down so tight that you couldn't breathe. Well, that's a completely different market than these other markets. And when you combine them all together and you report that the real estate market is, all of these landlords and everybody's going to lose all their properties because the tenants aren't paying their rent. Well, that didn't happen everywhere, right? So it's not an accurate or fair depiction of what's actually happening in the real estate market. So you have to be kind of clued in about that particular market, the type of property that it is, to understand really what's going on and whether it has legs or whether it doesn't have legs.
So, one, is there a typical person that comes to your seminars, that comes to your trainings?
No, there really isn't. I mean, in 2011 and 12, we went almost all online, and we have reached a very wide swath of the population. So new folks, we've even started getting, used to be that almost everybody that we talked to were between the ages of like 40 and 60. They were really concerned about retirement. But we have a lot of younger folks who have done really well for themselves, and they're trying to get ahead of, they want to be wise with their money. We find a lot of people, a lot of millennials, and then of course our same 40 to 60 who, are freaking out about retirement, obviously. And we have people who've got a couple $100,000 saved up. We have people who have millions of dollars, and everybody right now is trying to figure out where to put their money, because we already talked about inflation, and and everything just kind of feels unsettled, and people are trying to figure out what to do with their money. One thing I think that the hedge funds have right, they finally have figured out that real estate's a pretty good hedge against a lot of different things. One of them being that we're having right now is inflation. People ask, where should I put my money? Well, I personally believe that you should put your money in either businesses or assets that produce cash flow. So piling a whole bunch of cash over here that is just getting chopped every single year, I mean, good grief, we just had the government actually admit to 5.4, I think it was. If they're admitting 5.4, you can double it, easy, double it. And everybody right now listening knows it, because you can go to the grocery store, you go to the gas pump,
station.
all these things that they've taken out that you still have to pay for, you know inflation is more than that, right? So it's easy double. So every single year you leave a pile of money sitting in the bank, you get nothing from the bank, and your money just lost at least 10%. So piling money away, that's not smart, but you have to have cash. So cash flow producing assets, I believe, that especially that are hedged against inflation, are the best. And real estate is one of those assets. Businesses are another one of those assets. So, you know, and then having your liquidity stored in something also that I think is a hedge against the inflation in cash is also a good thing.
Yeah, I think cash flow equals lifestyle.
Yep.
Right.
You still have to be able to pay for things. You have to have cash to be able to do that, at least in our current society, right? You have to have cash to do that. So you need to have cash coming in, but I think people confuse that with cash piled up, which is not the same thing as cash coming in constantly. If you use the pile of cash to create machines that pump out cash, then you can continually buy machines that pump out cash. And then that cash flow just continues to grow, which is completely different than having a big, huge pile of cash. It's just a different thing. Banks even look at it differently, right? You're more bankable if you have a lot of cash flow coming in, as opposed to having minimal cash flow and a lot of cash.
Oh, that's right. So somebody comes to you and they want to get off the fence and start getting into real estate. Would you really start with the single family to 4-door, or would you stay with single family?
It completely
Duplex, quad?
It completely depends on the investor.
Yeah.
100% depends on the investor. We've had really busy professionals who, once we explain to them, look, you have to be involved with your management company. You have to run this, kind of like a business. You're used to running a business, or at least you're used to running a practice of some sort. And they're just like, man, I don't have time for that. Well, then, maybe syndications is a better place for you to start, because you can still get a really good return on your money. You can still get upside on a property, and you literally don't have to do anything, nothing. Once a quarter.
But you got to be an accredited investor.
But you got to be an accredited investor, right? And, if you're not, and you've never done a real estate deal, I mean, jumping into, a lot of properties all at once is probably a bad idea. Jumping into large properties all at once is probably a bad idea. Nice single family home, great way to dip your toe in the water, make sure you like it. We have had people that we've had come to us after they've bought 10 properties, and they're miserable because the management companies weren't doing a good job, and it just turns into this nightmare for them, and they're trying to get extricated from the nightmare, right? It doesn't have to be that way, but that nightmare wouldn't have been as bad if they'd have bought one and just tested it out and see if this was good for them, right? It's not for everybody, and that's okay. But in order to really figure that out, that's why we have the education piece first. That's why we talk to people about their assets, and then that's why we try really hard to get people to, hey, just try one, and see how it goes with your life. If this works, you can easily add 2, 3, 4, 5. You can easily do that. It's not that complicated, and we can help them do all of that. But it is pretty important to understand what you're getting into before you go, dive all the way in, I think.
Yeah. So when you're vetting a company or a syndicate or an education program, what are the couple things you really look for?
Well, so let me do syndication, and then you can take this and you could just go down all the way, right? I love to hear what the story is. And it's pretty easy if you just ask questions of a syndicator or of a sponsor. Ask them about how they found the property. Ask them about the deals that they've done. Ask them about the worst deal they've done. Ask them about this particular one. What's the story? Why are you getting such a good deal on this property? What's your plan for it? How do you plan to implement the plan? what's your worst case scenario on this property? What are you going to do if this doesn't work? Things like that. And I just listen for the story, and I listen for inconsistencies in the story. If there's inconsistencies in the story, I dive harder on that, right? Those inconsistencies will just, if a person doesn't know what they're doing, the whole story will fall apart really, really quickly. It'll just start to unravel. And you can do that on anything, literally anything. So if you're vetting a management company, it's the same thing we do. When we go in, we start asking them questions. Now, that's a little easier for us because we have, a lot of experience, thousands and thousands of properties, but we just start asking them questions about how they run their business, and then we just keep drilling. If there's not consistency in all of the responses from all the different people in the company, it's pretty clear to see that something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Systemically, there's something wrong because everybody in the company should know what's going on. That's the easiest way to vet the people. And then the properties, that's a little more complicated, especially on a syndication, because the numbers get way bigger, and there's a lot more line items. It's pretty easy with a house. There's not much expense that goes into a house, right? You've got principal, interest, taxes, insurance. You probably, there might be an HOA expense, and usually in single-family homes you don't even have lawn care, right? So there's not a whole lot of expense that can go wrong there. The real big thing that can trip you up is if they overquote the rent. So the only real thing you need to do is just verify the rent, and you can do that by calling a couple of the property management companies. You could do that by looking online and seeing what things rent for in the area, if you know the area. That's the biggest one that I think, if there's anything that you need to vet on a single family home, is probably that.
I want to go back to the beginning because I really like the fact that your little motto of through service, we build people. Mm-hmm. Where's that come from in your life?
Oh man, I think it comes from my parents.
Good place.
I hit the parent lottery. I really did.
Fortunate place.
Very fortunate. I mean, we didn't have money growing up, but I had something better than that. I had a really, really good family and incredible parents. And they were always serving people. And I noticed a few things. My grandpa, he was in real estate, and everybody I looked up to, the people that I knew that had money, they were kind, they were happy to help people, and I noticed that because I didn't have money, and I as a family we didn't. We looked, and I just kind of looked out and I looked. Those people were always serving people. They were always doing good. I'm sure there were some that weren't, but we didn't hang around those people, so I just didn't see them. Then when I went into the military, it was the same thing. That was big service. That's the whole reason you go in the military. You certainly don't go in there to get rich.
And thank you for that.
Yes, and thanks to everybody who's done that. But that was several years of having that kind of pounded into me, and I don't know. It's just kind of always been there. I guess I've had some really good mentors along the way too, and I've seen people who just live to serve other people, and eventually it comes around. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than, I guess being a cutthroat individual, but it just seems to always come around and bless them, and then it's blessed lives of a lot more people. And I think if you're going to be remembered for anything, it's probably not going to be for your money. It's probably going to be for the lives you've changed, right? So.
And you consciously built it into your businesses.
Yeah, and that happened in the mid life cycle of my business. I had been I'm a big believer in going out and getting more education and hanging around with people who are doing big things. And when I did that, I realized something that was wrong with my company, and that was that if you own a company and you constantly have turnover and you can't figure it out, that's one of the most maddening things there is. And that's where I was. I just kept having this turnover, and I didn't understand what the heck was going on. I hired a guy to come in and help us implement a system to run the business. Part of that was, listen, you need to be really clear with your purpose. You really need to be clear with the core values that you believe as a company that you should embody, and that they shouldn't be some platitude on the wall. They should literally be from inside of you. So what we did is he actually brought in the executive team, and we spent 3 days kind of taking all of this out of us. And what I realized was that when I had a purpose that was real, that everybody in the company believes in, and that we had core values that we shared, we just didn't have the turnover. Everybody had bought into the purpose. Everybody lived the core values. We didn't really have problems with people not doing things that they were supposed to be doing. And in the past, we'd had problems with people telling people that one thing and then doing another thing. That just doesn't happen anymore. And turnover went away. It was remarkable. In addition to that, all of the people that we do business with that aren't necessarily employed by our company, it's the same thing. We went through and we cut people off that didn't either sync up with our purpose or our core values, and we just chopped them off and we stopped doing business with them, and it completely changed the game. So that piece of it, me actually figuring that out, well, I didn't figure that out on my own. I actually hired somebody that helped me figure that out, and it changed the trajectory of the business entirely. It makes business way easier. And I think that, when people hear that kind of stuff, they go, yeah, I've seen those. They're on the walls. People don't even know what they say. Nobody lives by them. But if you actually do it purposefully up front, and then you build the whole environment around them, it's amazing what happens. It completely if you run a business right now and you're listening to me, if you do that, it will transform your business. I promise.
Well done. So I get off the fence, I buy my first property, right? I'm now a business owner, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you would encourage me to adopt all of those things into my one little business?
Sure. I think in appropriate stages, right? So it's the same question we get all the time, like, so should I have an LLC? Sure. Yeah, at some point, do you need an LLC to buy a property? I mean, if you have no assets really to speak of, other than your liquidity and your things over here in this one house, insurance is probably going to be okay, right? But LLCs are used for to protect you from this entity over here, and so yes, when it becomes a business, you should have all of those things, I believe, and you should run it like a business. I mean, if you have 10 properties or 15 properties out there and you're not running it like a business, you're going to lose money, number one. And number two, you're going to, once you get to the point where you have to actually start hiring people, like if you're running apartment buildings and you have payroll and things like that, if what I just said, if you actually have other people who depend on the income from this business and you're not all running in the same direction, you're going to have problems. You're going to have turnover, you're going to have people upset, and you're not even going to understand why, because on a resume, everything looks great. But if you're not all running in the same direction, it's just chaos. And it doesn't matter what your business is. It doesn't matter what widget you're selling. But yes, if it's real estate and it's your business, you better have that stuff dialed in, or it's not going to be fun. That's for sure.
Change in tax, as things pop in my head, because like I said, you're so interesting because you're in so many different areas. Financing, finding money.
Sure.
Right. Again, I'm like that guy that wants to get off the fence and get involved. Like you said, you had said earlier, you want all your things covered and have about $100,000.
Yep.
So you're not there. What about how creative have you gotten in the past to get into a property?
Well, the first one was incredibly creative that we talked about. But there's three things that you need to buy properties, right? You need time, you need knowledge, and you need money. You don't need to have all three of those, but you do need to have two of them, I believe, right? So if you have no money, then you need to have knowledge and you need to have time. And if you're missing one of those, it's still going to be really difficult to do real estate. So if you have no money and you have no time and you have knowledge, you still can't do real estate because you don't have any time to implement it. So go back to my super creative deal that I did. Well, I had been downsized from my previous job. I had all the time in the world. I had just been to a seminar where I was educated about how to do it, and I didn't have any money But those two things gave me the ability to go out and find a way to make it happen. Okay? But if I didn't have time, I wouldn't have been able to do it, right? Well, same thing. If you have money and you have a little bit of knowledge, well, then you don't need time, because you can use a company like mine and you don't need the time because someone else is doing the work for you. But you do have to have money to be able to do that, right? So you need those things, a combination of two of those. And you can be incredibly creative. You know, there's one of the cool ways to do it, I think, moving forward is going to be buying properties subject to the existing mortgage, because there's all of these mortgages out there that people have these crazy low interest rates, historically low interest rates. Well, if those people need to move out of their house and for whatever reason the market flattens, well, they've got this great underlying mortgage that has a very low payment, which probably is going to be able to allow me to cash flow the property. And believe it or not, there are people who will sell you their property subject to the mortgage that they hold, and you can control the property and not have the mortgage in your name.
Why would they do that?
Well, I asked the same question before I actually did my first one of those. The first one that I did, the person had already taken a job in another market. They had bought a house in the other market thinking that this one would sell, and it didn't sell. And they were making double payments, and they were literally going into a hole, which would have caused a foreclosure of one of the two of their houses. Both of us know which one, right? The one that they had just left. Where I came in and I said, look, the problem is you don't have any equity, not enough to actually sell the property with a real estate broker, which is what you need now. You're not even here anymore. But I can take it subject to your mortgage. And they were elated that I would make their payments for them. So literally all I did was just make their payments. I put a tenant in the property and I cash flowed it. Actually, I put a tenant in there with an option to buy, and I helped the tenant become qualified to buy that property within a year. I cashed those guys out. I made the difference, and I made the cash flow for the year, all because I did a creative deal. And that type of a creative deal, I think they're going to be on the rise as the market, whenever the market starts to flatten and this crazy, I can put my house on the market and I'm going to get 40 offers within the first day. Once that goes away and the market either starts to flatten out or maybe even decline a little bit, those people aren't going to be able to sell their houses like that. But they're going to have fantastic mortgages on them. So there's just one way. And there's a myriad of ways that you can do it if you just get out there and educate yourself. Where you're, this is really, really important, right? You can use that same buying property subject to hurt people or to help people. And if you do it to hurt people, ultimately that comes around. But I helped those people, and I deserve to make a profit for doing that, right? But if you're out there and you're buying properties like that and you have absolutely no money, well, then you're a problem, because ultimately something's going to happen to that property. You're going to have to pay for it, and you have no money to back yourself, right? So that's a creative way to do it, but you still have to have that liquidity for that property that we were talking about earlier, because the tenant may move out. You may have to completely, go through the house and spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to make it so that it's rentable again. You have to have the money to be able to do that stuff. So if you have no money, probably the best thing to do is to go out and wholesale, because you literally can do that with no money. And you put no one at risk by doing that. But you have to be careful with the knowledge that you get, right? Because some of this stuff, it all works, but some of it, if you don't use it properly or prudently, you can hurt people, including yourself, by utilizing it.
Can you give a little overview on wholesale? You mentioned wholesale earlier.
So wholesale is basically you're basically a marketing company. You go out and however you do it, you find a property that either has a problem or the people just don't want it for whatever reason, and you can negotiate a really good deal on the property, and then you have a list of buyers over here that'll go, I'll pay you cash for that property, and you put a wholesale fee in there, and you sell them your contract for that fee, right? And they get a good deal, because they're going to renovate it and put it on the retail market. These people over here didn't have to renovate it to put it on the retail market, so they got to get rid of it and get a little bit of money. And you got a wholesale fee in the middle for tying up that property and using your negotiation skills, using your marketing skills to be able to find that deal. That's a wholesale deal. Now, do I have to have money to do that? Nope. I had $0, and that's basically what I did on the first deal, except for I fixed the ceiling instead of,
And you don't have to have a real estate license to do this?
No, because when you put the property under contract, you control the property. Now, there's a lot of markets where I can't take that property and then list it on the multiple listing service, right? Because I don't own it. But I absolutely can sell my contract to somebody else, for sure.
That sounds like a standalone business for some people.
There's a lot of people who do hundreds of those a year, absolutely. And they have massive marketing budgets, and it's kind of like a machine. And they are cranking out properties. If you think about what this does to a community. You've got houses that have challenges, right? They're just sitting there. And here you've got a company that comes in and says, hey, we'll take this problem property off of your hands. Now the yard's not going to be overgrown. It's not going to be, maybe boarded up or have broken windows or whatever it is, because this person over here is going to sell it to this company over here who's going to renovate it, right? So this company over here, they can do what they're good at, which is renovating. Maybe they don't want to be the marketing arm. So this company over here markets, finds the properties, supplies this company with these properties. So we've helped this person out of a problem. They probably they're sick of the city fining them for the grass being too tall or for the windows being broken or whatever. That problem's gone out of their hair. This company over here has solved a problem, given it to this company over here who is going to rehab that property, make it look nice for everyone else in the community, and make a great place for someone to live, where before it was vacant, in a shambles, and it was just sitting there, probably causing problems, right? And everybody wins in that scenario, including the community at large. And done right, that's what real estate investors should be doing, right? So if that's the way the transactions work, you absolutely can do that as a wholesaler and help the community and help this company over here and help the person selling the property, and everybody literally can win.
Nice. So, and we did get off the fence a while ago and got a couple small rental properties, and I'm telling you, the biggest headache has been finding a good property management company.
It's not easy, especially if you're doing it by yourself. It is really not easy. And that's not to say that, I've been doing this since 2005, and we fired countless management companies over the years. I think one of the things being connected with a larger company is that there's a little more, we have a little bit more pull. In addition to that, when we start to get not one phone call that there's something wrong, but 5 and 6, we know now we've got to go and figure out what the heck is wrong now, and try to assess what the challenge is with the property management company so that we can move if we need to. And we'll wholesale move. We'll send out an email to our client base and say, listen, if you're having a great time, hang out. But I've moved my properties personally, and I'm recommending anybody else who needs to move over here. And we've done that several times. But management companies, this is tricky because all of them, almost without exception, know how to talk the game. They know how to sell people under their management company. But their management contract will tell you a lot. All of the fees are disclosed inside of their management contract, right? So let me tell you a few things that I think are red flags inside of a management contract. Management companies, any kind of a fee that doesn't join you and the management company together on the same path, that's a problem. One fee in particular, late fees. If the management company is collecting 100% of the late fee and you don't get any, they don't care if your people pay late. They're actually incentivized to have them pay late. That should at least be split, right? They shouldn't get all of that money. Now, there's a reason why they get some of it, and that's because they have to go chase down the tenant. That makes all the sense in the world to me. But 100%, that puts you guys on different sides. There's no longer a fiduciary duty there. I mean, it still is, but It feels like it's out of balance.
Well, yeah, because like you said, they're somewhat incentivized.
Right? You know, other things, any kind of a contract they want to put you on for any kind of service or anything like that, typically if they're going to put you on a contract for the service, it's because they're going to make money on that. Nobody's going to do that to lose money, right? It's almost never a better deal for you. The other thing is that they usually have vendors that they use, and they typically mark up the work. You need to know how much the work is marked up. In addition to that, you need to know, is the markup the same on an HVAC system? On an entire HVAC system where I'm going to pay $2,500 to $5,000, you're still going to get 10% on that when all you have to do is make a phone call, right? That's $500 potentially. It's not, you know, I'm sending out my maintenance guy over here, and so I need to charge, because I'm dealing with this thing, I need to charge an extra 10% markup because, you know, we have to send somebody out to fix the sink. That's a little different than a full HVAC system or a roof. These are things that you need to ask the management company, because when it's in the contract, they're going to get, if they get 10% on all maintenance, well, they're going to use their service providers, and they're going to get it on everything. Now, take that and multiply it by 150 units and see what happens, right? So when you move into the apartment complex, it's even more important that you understand what all of those fees are. They're associated with the properties, and they just need to be aligned with you and your interests. And if you feel like they're not, again, it goes back into that vetting conversation. You need to drill down. Why should you get paid 10% to make a phone call and have a company go out and install an HVAC system for $5,000? Why?
Yeah, I can make the phone call even
Right?
though I'm in
If
another
that's
state.
the case,
Yeah.
just tell me it needs to be replaced, and I'll make the phone call if you can't do that, right? I'm already paying 8%, 10%, whatever the number is, for you to make that phone call. Now, if you have to manage a project, like if it's them managing several different contractors going in to turn your unit because somebody left, okay, that's extra work. I get it. So just, you know, think through this, and as you're thinking through your contract, look at all of the different things that are in there. If the contract says that they should be the listing agent on your property if it ever sells, how is that in your best interest? You don't know if that's in your best interest. And why would you sign a contract that says that they get X% no matter who sells the property? Those kind of contracts where they're completely one-sided, I can tell you right now that that's not a good management company.
No, some companies would have that in there?
Absolutely they do.
Wow.
Absolutely they do. And then from our company's perspective, we also want to know what's their scalability. Because there seems to be a number right after about 200 to 250 where you need extra bodies or you need really, really tight systems. And if you don't have them, you don't make any money until 500 or 800 doors. There's this void where management companies fall apart. And we've seen it over and over and over again. And so if they're not already there and they've not already scaled it, what's the plan for when you hit here, and how are you going to scale? Do you have the money to be able to hire the people? Do you already have the systems in place?
Do you have a plan?
You know, have you thought it through? Do you know that there's a problem here when you hit 250, 300 properties? And most of them don't. Most of them started as a turnkey operation, and management's pretty simple until 100 doors, 150 doors. Once you get north of 200, 250, unless you have really good dialed in systems, it's going to be a train wreck, and it'll get there really quick.
Ron, thank you so much for your time, experience, expertise, and your passion for all of this.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure being here.
I just love Ron Phillips. I've known him for years. He's always given me great advice, and now he was here to give that to you too, so I was really excited that he sat for this interview with James and that he was able to share this wisdom with you. Hopefully you saw part one of James's interview with Ken McElroy. Great interview, but we're not done with Ken yet. Part two is coming up right now. Get some good information and learn from this master. Enjoy.
how do we do this? How, if I'm in your living room and I'm saying, okay, look, I've got a little bit of savings and I want to start moving into this. How would you direct me? Because you're now one of the great educators too. So how do we start the process?
Yeah, thank you. That's been a blessing. So obviously years ago, I met Robert and Kim Kiyosaki, and they're dear friends of mine now. And but the truth is my very first meeting with Robert, I was pitching him on a deal to invest in Tucson. That's how we met. And as I was trying to find money for my next deal, and I didn't realize who he was, or he had obviously written Rich Dad Poor Dad. I went out and read it, and it resonated with me as well. And then he asked me, "Hey, why don't you teach some of this to some of these folks?" And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I think they would really benefit." So I went to one of his seminars, and I had never publicly spoken before, and I went up on stage, and I'm sure I bumbled through it, but they came over, people were interested, and I was just having a conversation like this, and I put it into a book, and then more books. And so all that money goes to, we have a full-time director of philanthropy here in our company. And so the money, all my books and stuff, revenues go, and we give that away. And so it's been my kind of why, so it's been great to be able to produce these assets that produce revenue. Again, you produce a book, it produces revenue. And my ABC's book, I think it's still doing like 100,000 net a year or something. And so, we support the local charities and food banks and things that cystic fibrosis and autism, things that I'm important to me. And so that's what I've been doing with the education piece. And so we started a YouTube channel during COVID, actually, that just blew up. I think we're at 300,000 subscribers now. And
what's it called?
It's Ken McElroy. And then we have a podcast. It's Real Estate Strategies with Ken McElroy. And so it does take time. It's actually a lot more time than I anticipated. I really enjoy it. It's free. It's a blessing to be able to teach some of this stuff and give people the opportunity to go and try to learn for themselves, because there's a lot of people that will take your money for seminars and stuff. And I'm not saying that all of them are bad, but you just got to make sure that whoever you're giving your money to, again, kind of going back to that school theory issue, you make sure that they're actually out doing it. They're a real teacher. They have experience. And they can bring that to the table, and they're speaking from experience as opposed to from theory.
Yeah. So that first seminar you did for Robert, do you remember what you taught?
Oh my gosh, I was so nervous. So you'll really laugh at this. I forgot to go. So it was started Friday and Saturday, and a Sunday morning I woke up and I told my wife, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to go to this seminar for Robert. And I had flip-flops on, shorts, and a t-shirt. And I got in my car and I drove out there, and I don't know what I was thinking. And I walked in and he's like, Kenny, come on up on stage. And I was like, so I walked up on stage, and I was like, everybody's in there professionally dressed except me. And I think I was talking about whatever deal I was working on at the time. So that it wasn't too hard. But that was the beginning of a long friendship with those guys. And Robert and Kim have brought me all over the world. I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed all the. That was one of the things I wanted to learn how to do, was speak better in front of groups, and so it was on my little bucket list, and so it was a great opportunity to join them, and it's a real blessing to be part of their company and as an advisor with them, and writing books under their brand.
Well, your success, your lifestyle, and particularly your passion have me sold. So I want to get into it, right? How are you taking that new person, somebody who's just dabbled? I got to find deals, got to find money, and got to know how to pull off these transactions. What's the first thing you're telling me I should do?
Well, the first thing I tell is never to give anybody your money. and to be really, really educated first, and find some good mentors and some coaches. And so that is the number one thing you want to find in every case, in everything I've ever done, whether it's speaking or book writing or working out or running or even real estate. I found somebody that's really good in that, and they'll do it. I even when I was raising my family, I found a mentor through a group in called YPO, which I'm in, and he was my mentor for 10 years. I met with him every month, and he had 6 kids that he raised, and they all liked him at the end, right? So I was like, that's what I want. So you got to find somebody that is doing it, and I'm telling you, there's so much knowledge out there. So go out and find and start looking at deals, start underwriting deals, and start getting in some of these masterminds and some of these groups, and do that first, and see if you even like it. And then when you get ready, trust me, the deals will show up. But the deals, people think that raising the money is really hard. It's not. What's hard is finding the deal that works, as like, and we're all looking for stuff that produces cash flow. So once you can find that, the money shows up, and you have to have a little bit of faith around that, and you can create a network around that. But especially with today's social media, I didn't have any of that. I was having lunches and coffees and things like that, and who do you knows and all that. But now, you can go on LinkedIn and see that there's these accredited investor groups that are thousands of people. And, there's ways to reach out on Facebook and, all the social media that, to fund whatever you need. But finding the deal is the hardest part. And so being able to see it, a deal is what you see, before you buy it. I never buy anything ever and figure it out later. So I'm always doing that before. I see the deal and what it could be, and that's what I buy. I buy the property that has potential, and see where can I take that property. And so once you have the ability to see that, and then everything will start to fall in line for you, especially if you have the team to help to pull that off.
Takes a while to develop a little team if you've only got 1-2 properties and you want to scale to 7, 8, 9.
The great way to start is just get on MLS. My experience has been that a lot of realtors are commission based, and they don't really understand. They're looking for that. I call it a tip. They just want to be paid for the transaction, and so that's a good thing. But you need to get as many of those as you can. Also, property managers, I think, are great resources because they can tell you the truth. So oftentimes the seller or the realtor might not know, but the property manager is going to know. They're going to know what kind of rent and what's going on in an area, and where the crime is, and all those, where the good schools are, all that kind of stuff, because that's their job as they're starting to fill up. So being from that business. Those are easy people to just have meetings with on Zoom, in a coffee shop somewhere, and just to start to get to just to try to figure out what's happening in an area. As I just got back from Manhattan Beach. I met with 6 realtors while I was there, and every single one of them had a different spin on whatever. But the point is that there's different stuff going on, and each one brings a little bit different knowledge. And it's fun for me, to try to figure out, a certain market, and that the boots on the ground is the most important thing. It's not, you're not going to get it from the internet. You're not going to get it from reading something. Real estate is very local, and things happen at the ground level, and that's also where the opportunities are if you can see them.
So if you're a new investor, would you encourage us to stay local?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Especially for your first investment. Yeah. If you want to actually do it yourself, there's multiple things. One is this is a big problem. People invest, they put their money somewhere, and they end up having to fly there, to manage it. And, there's just all these things. And then they're meeting with the property manager, and they're there for, maybe a day. It's really, really, really difficult. It's a lot easier if you have something nearby. You can drive by, you can check on, you can check the property manager, you can call them. It's just kind of that constant tension. If you have the time. If you don't have the time, then obviously finding a property manager that's amazing is another thing that, and if you don't know how to property manage, I suggest you hire that person and then maybe transition out of that, to do it yourself over time, and just to learn their systems and all the kind of stuff that we started talking about. And so those are the main things. Is you don't want to, in my opinion, you don't want to invest out of state. You want to invest locally first, so that you want to make small mistakes at a small level locally, and then branch out. It's just going to be a lot easier. You'll be much wiser on your next deal.
How about, I'm seeing more and more turnkey companies where it sounds like maybe where I live is the prices have gone through the roof, right? Like the best deal is still going to be above retail. But there's other parts of the country where I know properties are still good, right? There's areas in the Midwest, et cetera, where I can get a good property with a good return. And there are turnkey companies out there where it's all, right? I make the one investment. I've got the property, I've got the property manager and a tenant.
Yeah, those can definitely work. There's definitely profit in there, obviously, for that company. So that's a good way to start if there's profit. And it all boils down to cash flow. So the biggest issue in that particular case is going to be your income and your expense. And so what I find oftentimes when I'm trying to buy something is sometimes the expenses are understated and the income's overstated and the vacancies understated. And so, so unwinding the truth behind, because once the dust is settled, you own it and they're long gone. It's only you and the tenant and the property. And so those are some things that they can go look at on my YouTube channel. We have, kind of things to ask and how to navigate through that. But turnkey can be good if obviously there's enough there. But just understand, what I do is I take it all the way down to the person who's doing the turnkeys. Essentially, there's a lot more profit in finding something old, fixing it up, and sticking a tenant in than just sticking a tenant in and paying kind of almost retail. I try to buy it at wholesale, and then you get all of that.
Yeah, a lot more work. So you got to be a little more committed, which, I mean, that's part of it. Nothing's for free, right?
Yeah. And that's the other piece, is how much time do you have? A lot of people don't have that much time. So sometimes investing with someone else is the best choice as long as it cash flows. So markets come in and out of favor all the time. So, I'm from Seattle. I've done stuff in Portland, Seattle, Las Vegas, all over Nevada, all over Arizona and Idaho. And so through all these years, some markets, like right now, Boise is at the top. Boise is like on fire, but wasn't that long ago where it wasn't. And I've seen it on fire before. Same with Austin. I'm buying a property in Austin right now. And, I was in Austin and I bought and the market went down. So, then I had to wait until it kind of came back, and I bought in 2005 and then it kind of came back. And so, markets go in and out of favor based on a number of factors. And so just know that at the end of the day, it's how much you pay, what's your mortgage and what's your rent, and do you have any cash flow? So as long as that formula works everywhere. It works in Boise, it works in LA, it works in Phoenix. And yes, the prices are higher and the mortgages are higher, but the rents are higher, and expenses, are all over the map. I mean, property taxes, insurance, and utilities and things can be all over the map. But, as long as you understand the basic fundamentals of income and expenses and cash flow, then you actually can pretty much buy anywhere based on, where the market's heading. And that's the other piece, is you always want to try to be where people are going. and you want to try to be in that spot. And for me, it's a buy and hold strategy. I like to buy, hold, and then harvest. So I like the equity to go up and then put more debt on, and go up and put more debt on as rents rise. Expenses rise too, but hopefully rents rise higher or faster than expenses. And so that's kind of the game.
You said something quick like that grabbed me. You like to buy and hold, which intrigues me. You said the property values go up, but you're not betting on that. It's a plus, right?
Yes.
You know it's cash flowing, but the property goes up, and what you said
Yeah. So like the example I had in Austin in 05, we bought there, and the property values went down. So here we bought a property, and the values were down, but what saved me was the cash flow.
Yeah, when properties go down, do rents follow, or do rents tend to stay the same?
So what happens is typically you start to see rent concessions. So like 100 off, 200 off, half a month free on a 12-month lease, or 1 month free, or I've seen as rough as 3 months free on a 12-month lease. So that's as far as I've ever seen it. And so the lenders or anybody buying the property, they're looking at the NOI, which is income minus expense. That's NOI, or net operating income. So that's what they look at. So if your vacancies are higher, or your rents are, let's say, going down, or you're collecting less, then obviously your NOI is going to go down, because you have your expenses there too. And so on that Austin property, we had flat rents and higher vacancy. And so our cash flow went way down. Now, so we bought it, and we thought it was going to produce a higher cash flow, but it didn't. So we had like 1.5 to 2 years of basically just trying to cover, the debt and the expenses from whatever income we collected. So that can definitely happen. And so now on the flip side of that, we held that property all the way through, the next cycle. And when Austin started getting hot again, we benefited from that. But kind of the point is that, markets, they come in and out of favor. Like you would not want to, buy or a rental in downtown San Francisco, or downtown Portland, or downtown Seattle right now. But only 2 years ago, they were like the best, you know what I mean? So that now that it's a pandemic issue and some other obviously ensuing things that are going on, but, pandemic is across the country, and we have other markets that are going like this. So, people are moving to Florida, they're moving to Texas, they're moving to Arizona. And all you got to do is track like the U-Haul trucks, the Ryder trucks, North American van lines, the out-of-state driver's licenses, and see where people are going. And it's putting bubbles in areas all over the country. And so let's just pick on Phoenix, because that's where I am. As we have a lot of people moving here from the Northwest and from California right now. And, and what that does is it puts stress on the system, the existing housing stock. It puts stress on the rents. It puts stress on the restaurant reservations, and, like anything and everything that you can think of,
Getting a tea time.
Yeah, all that. Yes, tea times, right. All that stuff gets affected as people, move. And then what happens is real estate folks or developers, they're kind of slow to respond. And all of a sudden, when something's 100% occupied, or, there's maybe you can never get a reservation somewhere, then another one pops up. And that's kind of how things naturally, organically grow. But they can also extract, they can also come back. So, and then that's actually what I like to go in and buy. I like to buy during those kinds of times when the market's kind of imploding for whatever reason. And it can be, there's so many reasons why that can happen. And so you just got to kind of pay attention as a real estate investor, and so that's why we're focusing on Texas at the moment, is because, the next baby boomer sector, let's say, is getting older. And I'm in that category, but they're, so we're buying properties around the Texas Medical Center, and that's also an area that stayed open during the pandemic, and it's really taxed with people, and but they're and so it's an area that's full of medical personnel. So you want to be kind of around that stuff, around where people are, and so it's same thing with universities. I have a lot of friends that invest right near universities, but as you know, enrollments can go up and down in colleges. So again, that could be a problem. So it's kind of common sense stuff. Military bases are another really good one, because there's not a lot of on-base housing. That's sometimes it's really dated, and they like to live off base. So there's, and we built some storage facilities in Corpus Christi, Texas, right near a base for that exact reason, dehumid storage. And so, you just got to look at the opportunities that are happening, and then solve the problem.
So are there plenty of properties out there? I mean, for a lot of us, the markets are still skyrocketing, right? And we're now competing against big corporations that are coming and buying homes left and right. Everything I'm hearing from all of you, the experts we've been talking to, is really the number one thing to do is take action, right? So do I wait for that little bit of a downturn, or do you see it coming?
It's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
There are definitely bubbles in areas, and there are definitely areas that are depressing. So the thing is you have to take action. There's so many ways that I didn't realize when I first got into this, that you can, you provide your own cash flow, you get tax-free income from cash out refis, you get the ability to 1031, you get the ability to write off the depreciation, cost segregation, the bonus depreciation, all these things that I didn't realize and I didn't even understand when I started. And so you literally can have tax-free income if you're educated enough. And so I don't know any other business that you can buy something and have your tenants pay it off for you, and you get the benefits of the income. You can build an incredible life. And most people's wealth, as you know, it's sitting there right in front of everyone, is in their home. I mean, it's just so apparent. But what's happened is the financial sector has done such a great job of marketing and extracting people's money through 401ks and retirement plans and things like that, and wealth management. As you know, everybody takes a little piece. And ultimately, James, I get that money anyway. I don't know if you realize that. Like as people put their money into banks, or people put their money into wealth management, let's say with JP Morgan. Well, JP Morgan's looking for guys like me to buy real estate. They're giving me in the form of debt and equity. So it's basically other people's money. It's just been giving it, you give it to a money manager, and then they have to manage it. So, you just want to be on the other side of the equation. You want to be on the side that gets the money.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think a lot of people take control of their own personal financial freedom
Sure.
as well as they should. It's really in my own family. My brother just retired, and I love him, but I said, how's your portfolio? Oh, I don't know. I haven't met with a guy for like a year. I'm like, and that is unfortunately kind of the normal.
It's how we're taught, right? And you get into you go to school, you get into corporate America, and they give you a 401 and they match it, right? So you're like, oh, I got to stay in this. So you encourage people to get at least to a self-directed IRA?
Oh yeah, for sure I do. And I think people should take control of their own finances, just like they do their health, their relationships, or whatever it is, spirituality. All those kinds of things are choices that people make. But for whatever reason, they take their money and they stick it over here, and they open their quarterly statement, and they maybe get on a phone call every once in a while. And that's unfortunately the system. My sister took the other route. She actually started buying rentals, and she never went to college. My brother did. My sister did not. And, she's worth millions of dollars now because she bought these houses, like one every 3 or 4 years. I think she has, 10 now or something. And, so here, she retired. She was a bookkeeper at a medical eye clinic in a little town called Everett, Washington, which is where I grew up. And, she's like, she created her own, retirement income. She has cash flow and equity. So they're just two different choices. And I just think that people, now she didn't have a choice. She didn't have a corporate person throwing a 401k, and she didn't get into the system. So that's why she did it. But I think that if you're in the system, you ought to really take a look and say, okay, maybe I shouldn't have all my money in the stock market or in these kinds of things, and just diversify, and be open-minded to other things, because I think having a high-paid job and being in a stock and being in the system of with a wealth manager is the least amount of control that you can have.
Well, I think we're all watching this because we feel that, and it's time. So you mentioned your sister has 10 homes. Would you say, prior to having the opportunity to talk to all of you, 10 homes sounded like this big thing, but now it sounds like 10 homes is actually a pretty doable thing.
Well, she's in her 60s and she started, in her 40s. So, 10 homes over 20 years, slow and steady wins the race, right? And that's what she's done. She didn't go out and knock that out in a year or two, with outside capital. Her and her husband saved, and they ended up, and they were cleaning units and fixing units and, renting multiple rooms in the units. And, I probably had 100 phone calls with her, over the last 20 years, to help walk her through some things. But she did it. She took action. To Robert Allen's point, she took action. And now, she's, I'm just so proud of her because she's, she just retired, and she, she has quite a net worth.
Yeah. But there's a lot of strategies out there she wasn't aware of or didn't make use of. I'm sure you've taken a lot of students to, say, 10 homes in a relatively short period of time, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that it's, the biggest obstacle for people is the money, usually, on being able to, how am I going to track the money to buy it? And I got to reiterate, it's the deal. Like, if somebody brought me a deal that was incredible, I would buy it immediately, and so once you start to see the deal, or with other people that see deals, then, I always tell people, like, if you see a vacant building, it's worth a lot less than if it has a tenant in it. That's as simple as it is. So, so can you buy a vacant building and before you close it, get a tenant in it? Yes, you can. And so that's the model. That's really the model, is how do you take something and just improve it and create cash flow from it. And there's sellers all over the place that own properties and own land, and have run them a certain way. The property we're buying in Austin, the owner has run it for 17 years. And so he's, operated the property. There's a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of capital work that we had discovered. But the fact that, you get complacent after 17 years of running a property, and sometimes it's producing, your basis is so low, you paid so much less for it years ago. You're not probably putting a bunch of money back into it. And so those are everywhere, on a condo or a house or a fourplex or an 8 or a commercial shopping center or whatever. They're just everywhere.
Yeah. So there's still deals the average person can go out and find and get into.
There really, really is. I know what happens a lot of times is people get caught up in, where they are locally. So, the houses are, 50% higher than they were, 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. So I'm gonna, and that's a very common thing to get caught up in. But what you also have to look at, if it's an investment property, is what's happening on the rent side. So, and like in Scottsdale here, the entry level, and I know that this is probably going to sound high for some people and low for others, but you can still buy a home in Scottsdale for around $400,000. And now, 3 years ago, that would have been 300. But the rents have gone from 1,200 to 1,500 to 2,000 at the same time. So you just have to take a look at the, if you're driving to cash flow, yes, you need more down payment. But if rents are going to continue to go up here because we have a big supply shortage. So you're going to cash flow on day one. If you keep it full, you're going to cash flow, down the road. And that's the key to all of this is if that $500,000 home, let's say, or $400,000 home took $100,000 to put down and it produces $10,000 annually, then that's a 10% cash on cash return. You're beating inflation. You're making cash flow, and you've taken $100,000 in cash instead of sitting in the bank, probably at negative because of inflation. Yeah. It's now in an asset that's growing with inflation. And so you're going to get your money, and the debt that you get is also going to grow from inflation. So and you get cash flow. So it just makes so much sense to me to right now, especially, to not be heavy in cash because of what's happening with inflation. And so you want to be in what I would call inflation hedged assets. Doesn't have to be real estate, but certainly it's a great choice.
So hard question to answer, I'm sure, but I got to ask it. What would you tell somebody that wants to get started, the minimum bucket of cash they got to have?
Well, the truth is they don't have to have any. I didn't start with any. Most of my friends don't have any, and so that the way you put a deal together, James, is you find it and then you bring it to an investor. On some of my billboard deals, I actually had a guy that I knew actually bring me the deal, and so I put up all the cash and I gave him 25% of the deal, and so I'm happy because it's producing cash flow. I got to use cash to buy a billboard. He's happy. Now he's not making cash flow now because right now it's going against the actual investment. But it will, as we start to pass, as the investment starts to get paid down, essentially I'm basically like a bank, but he brought me the deal. And so you can find deals and you can do deals and bring them to people and get percentages of them for just actually bringing them the deal. That happens all the time. That's how almost everyone starts. And then from there, when we sell that deal, he's going to make 25% of the profit over the investment, which is, probably several $100,000. And for basically finding something and handing it over to me. So it happens all the time, and it's about the deal as and less about the money.
Yeah, finding the deal is kind of everything.
Yeah.
In this day and age, any particular couple strategies you can give us for finding the deal for the people who aren't in it yet, where things are coming to you?
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch. First of all, the best way is to make sure that you're communicating and getting emails and getting on everybody's database in the market that you want to be in. So let's say you want to be in Scottsdale. So there's probably 20 or 30 guys and gals that are really working Scottsdale, both on the office sector, the multifamily sector, the single family sector, maybe more on the residential real estate side. But you want to get on all that company information. So you want to be on, you want the deal flow coming to you in an email database. So that's number one. You want that flow of information. Then from there, you can kind of figure out, what it is that you want to do.
Yeah. So I find these people. Am I just going to send them email contact and just
Yep. Well, so their job is to sell stuff. So let's just pick a company. There's a company here locally by the name it's Shell. It's called Shell Commercial. And the guy, Randy Shell, I've now met. I actually bought an office. He brought an office building to me. I invested in it, gave him a piece. He didn't put up any money. We bought it for $3 million. It's worth $9 million. That's a real deal that happened maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Shell Commercial is a small little local boutique company that handles stuff in the Scottsdale area. So I said, listen, send me any deals, and you can basically sign up on their website on almost all of these. And I'm talking about Cushman & Wakefield, CBRE, Marcus & Millichap, whoever they are, it doesn't really matter. Sotheby's, there's all Walker Dunlap is now starting to get into the business. So you just, you don't even have to talk to anybody. You basically just submit your information because all you're getting is an email on the deals. What they do is they try to grow their email database. So let's say you own a building, and so you go to a guy like me, and maybe I own that Shell Commercial. I'm going to blast it out to everybody on my email list. And if you're not on the list, you're not seeing the deal. And Randy doesn't know who's on the list. He's just trying to grow that list. It might be a 16-year-old kid, or it might be a 90-year-old guy. It doesn't really matter. He's trying to grow his list and send that out to as many people as he can. And so that's number one, is getting on as much, getting the data as much as you can and taking a look at some of the deals that are out there, because those folks are out there doing deals like Randy himself. I mean, that's all he does full time. He gets up in the morning and goes and meets with, buyers and brokers and looks at land, and, he's out there hustling, and there's thousands of those folks everywhere out there doing stuff, and they're always trying to put deals together. So that's the first thing that I would suggest. Super easy to get on databases. I'm on so many that I'm actually opting out of some. But I'm always, and I do that also on the economic side. So I'm on all these different newsletters. A lot of people are on stuff that, that they really, really like. Like my fiance, she's on a bunch of health stuff, right? She gets, I don't know, 6 or 8, every week. So these are everywhere. You can get on this stuff everywhere. And then, so you just get this database together. And you start to attract it. And then the second thing is you want to figure out exactly, it can be overwhelming. So you want to narrow down exactly what it is you're trying to do. So like when Robert and Kim, when they first went to Portland, Oregon, this is exactly what they did, that first step. The second one was they had a goal. Their goal was to buy one single family house for 10 years in Portland. That was their goal when they were there. And they bought one, and then the next year they bought 3. So start, just take action. Then you start to learn things, who your lenders are, who's kind of sourcing some good deals. But then what happens is you start to get the personal email, and that's what happens. That's what's happening to me right now. I get texts, I get DMs on social media, I get phone calls, I get people coming to the office, with stuff, so all of a sudden the deals start flowing to you as you start to do deals. And, if you buy a home, you're immediately on so many people's lists. You'll have all these new friends. You won't even, it'll be crazy. So, and every time we do something like that, of course, we get a flood of new people on the debt, on the equity, on the deals, and, you name it. And that, it just continues to build on itself over time.
Mm-hmm. Quick question. If I move my 401k into my self-directed, right, and I buy a property and get it to cash flow, right? So I can buy property through my self-directed 401, right, or self-directed IRA.
Yes, absolutely.
And I get it to cash flow. Spending that cash flow?
Yeah. So obviously it's in a retirement account.
So tax.
The minute you take it out for personal use, it's taxed. But so the money goes back into that retirement account, and then you use that account to continue to buy. So, I actually own quite a few properties that way in my defined benefit account, which is, just another form of retirement account. And I actually bought a property that cash flows out of that account because, and actually I own some of my billboards in that account. The money on the Clear Channel deal goes back into my retirement account. So now I'm sitting there with all this cash again. I'm like, okay, now I got to figure out how to put that back out. So yes, but that's how it works. You can't take it out personally. If you do, then it's taxed.
Yeah, it gets a little expensive, but you use it to buy more real estate, and
Yes.
so that it all stays protected until such a time you're ready to pull it out and buy a castle somewhere in Rome.
Yeah. And that grows on itself. Like my sister, if she would have had a retirement account and bought into there, it would have grown, tax deferred, right, during that time. And so, that's a great strategy to do, especially if you have a bunch of money sitting in there. I always tell people, move it to a self-directed. If you go to, I've had the benefit of going to a bunch of other countries, Canada, obviously, which a lot of people have been to, it's called the the Retirement Savings Plan, RSP. And in Australia, it's called the superannuation, but it's basically a 401k. In those countries, they allow people to self-deal. The US is actually the most restricted. Yeah. So for them, it's foreign, like, what? You can't use your own money to buy what you want. But, again, Wall Street's come in and said, no, you can't, but you can move it to a self-directed and then you can do it. It's, it's basically like moving it to another bank, but you have to be really careful on the way that it's titled. And obviously make sure that it's in the name of the self-directed IRA account. The money goes back into that account and stays in that account. But it's a great way to build cash up, over here. And again, managing it yourself, whether you're getting cash flow at this point or not, you're taking action and you're managing your own financial future.
I like to ask, is there a question I should have asked that I didn't? Because this is, I'm learning as I go. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits from all of this is what I've been able to show my family, my friends, and kind of create a legacy. So that's kind of, where we're heading next is, how to transform out of this business, replace it with people that can keep it going, get my kids in here working on it and creating a nice financial future for them. And, my brother's path, that was his path, and, God bless him. But that a lot of people fall into that path, and mine is kind of the rogue entrepreneur path. I don't really see it that way. I see it as, I have a lot of time, I have a lot more time than you. And so for me, it just all boils down to that, the time. How do you value your time? Because money is the claim on time. That's actually what it is. And if it's working for you, that's why in chapter 1 of Rich Dad Poor Dad, it says the rich don't work for money, and it's true.
Ken, what a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Well, that completes, James, your interview with Ken McElroy, who you said, that guy's a wrestler.
Oh, yeah. So I loved him right away.
You can spot wrestlers, can't you?
Yeah.
James is a very, very accomplished mixed martial artist, so he knows a wrestler when he sees one. And he knows, I guess, how to wrestle real estate, too.
The guy's brilliant. It was such a delight to get to know him. And I'm staying in touch. That's another guy I'm staying in touch with.
It's good to make friends with the right people.
Oh, yeah.
And we want to introduce these friends to you, so thanks for being here. That concludes episode 6 of our 9-part docuseries, Hacking Real Estate. I love this whole real estate arena. There's so many facets to it. There's so much opportunity in it. And also, as a quick reminder, you can own this information during this free viewing period at a very significant discount, and as well get some great bonuses along the way. We wanted to create packages for you that would really enrich your life. So take a look if you haven't already. And again, if you have, our sincere thanks. I'll see you in episode 7.
The best deals were always when I could meet with a seller directly. That's the best way to do it, is get to know people, make relationships. We all do know people, and the only thing holding us back from going and creating those opportunities for them is fear. It's only fear that's blocking people. It's not because we have to know all these wealthy people. Align yourself with investment opportunities where there's amazing operators in place already. The system and the situation is proven. The asset class is solid and reliable, and you don't have to manage it and have a job. You can actually just put the money in and have it pay back cash flow and have it be secure.
Man, there's so many different ways you can do it. There's deals out there for everybody. I really believe in that. And there's different ways of finding those deals. There's deals for you that may not be for me. There's deals for me that may not be for you. But bottom line is, if I want it bad enough and I hunt hard enough, those deals are out there. What I do like is seeing value being created. And that's where I found my niche in real estate, is taking something and seeing a vision for how that could look to getting it to a value that's significantly higher than what it is today.